Welcome back to Automate Office Work, the show where we talk about simplifying, systematizing, and scaling the work that runs the modern world. Today's episode has a deceptively simple title: What is value? Now, that might sound like a philosophical question, but if you work in any office, any business process, or if you're even remotely involved in automation, this question is everything. Because if you don't know what value is, you can't automate it. You can't even improve it. So today I want to unpack what value really means in the context of work, process design, automation, and even perception. We'll explore how to tell the difference between real value and perceived value, why so much office work has no actual value at all, how automation changes the way we see value, and how to make sure every process you build, every flow, every script, every form points to something that truly matters. Let's dive in. So, what is value? At its simplest, value is the reason a process exists. If you think of a process as a journey, value is the destination. It's the output. It's the reason we start the engine and hit go. Everything that happens in between should move us toward that output. And anything that doesn't, anything that slows you down, adds confusion, or just feels nice but doesn't change the result, that's waste. Value is not about activity, it's about impact. Let's make that concrete. Imagine you're processing invoices. The customer's value isn't in the fact that you typed something into Excel or moved a PDF into a folder. Their value is in getting paid accurately and on time. That's it. All the other stuff, the copying, the checking, the emailing, those are supporting actions. If they can be automated, eliminate them. If they don't contribute directly to the output, question them. Now, there are two really simple tests you can use to decide whether something is value or not. Test 1. Does this activity contribute directly to the final output the requester cares about? If the answer is no, it's not value. Test 2. Would the requester, the customer, the user, the boss, whoever, be willing to pay for this activity if they knew exactly what it was? If the answer is no again, it's not value. Most of what happens in offices fails one or both of these tests. We spend time massaging spreadsheets, formatting slides, writing status updates, CCing people in emails who don't read them, all in the name of work. But the hard truth is, a lot of office work isn't valuable. It's activity masquerading as value. Automation helps expose that. When you start mapping processes for automation, you suddenly see all the steps that exist just because someone, somewhere, once thought they might be useful. That's when you realize most processes grow like weeds, not gardens. There's a dangerous trap I call the value mirage. That's when people confuse the appearance of value with real value. You see this in every department. People think if the process looks complicated, it must be important. Or if it takes a long time, it must have high value. We've been trained, culturally, psychologically, to equate effort with worth. But that's not always true. Sometimes the most valuable thing is the one that takes the least effort, because it's designed well. Think about when you call a support line. You don't value being on hold for 15 minutes. You value your problem getting solved quickly. But inside that company, there's probably a whole department measuring average handle time, producing reports, analyzing customer patience levels, as if any of that bureaucratic activity were the real product. It's optics. Managing optics to create perceived value is not real value. In automation, this is especially dangerous because automating the wrong thing, automating waste, just makes you faster at doing things that don't matter. Automation doesn't create value by itself. It just amplifies whatever value or waste is already in the system. Let's zoom out for a second. Processes rarely exist on their own. They nest inside other processes, like Russian dolls. Take an example from my world. A client asks a lawyer to draft a contract. At first glance, you might think the value is the document itself, the signed, polished contract. But zoom out. The client doesn't actually want a contract. They want something to happen in the world. Maybe they're buying land. Maybe they're developing property. Maybe they're securing a partnership. The contract is just an input into a larger process. the process of achieving that real-world outcome. Now, if the lawyer focuses only on what they think is important, the perfect clause, the right formatting, the aesthetics, they might completely miss the bigger picture. Maybe the client needed that contract urgently to close financing, or maybe they needed a simplified version so that both parties could sign faster. That's the trap of local optimization, making your part perfect while ignoring how it fits into the whole. The real value lies in the end-to-end outcome, not just your piece of it. So if you're automating a process, don't just automate your department's version of done. Step back and ask, what role does this process play in the bigger system? That question alone can transform how you design and measure value. Here's a rule that sounds simple but upends how most offices work. Value is defined by the requester, not the processor. If you're the one doing the work, your opinion about what's valuable doesn't actually matter. The person making the request, the customer, client, manager, or downstream department, defines the value. You exist to serve their goal. This is where automation teams sometimes get it wrong. They automate what's convenient to automate, not what's valuable to automate. They'll say, we can build a flow that moves data between SharePoint and Teams, which is fine, but if the customer's problem is actually decision latency or approval confusion, that automation might not move the needle at all. Real automation starts with empathy, understanding what the requester actually needs. Sometimes they don't even know themselves. That's where you come in. To truly deliver value, you have to understand intent. Every request is just the surface of something deeper. Someone says, can you build a dashboard? The real intent might be, I'm under pressure to report performance, and I don't trust my data. Someone says, can we automate this email notification? The intent might be, I keep forgetting to follow up and it's making me look unreliable. If you just fulfill the literal request, you might miss the actual value. That's why listening, real intentional listening, is the most underrated automation skill. Get to know the intent of your requesters. Understand not just what they're asking for, but why. That's how you design processes that truly create value, not just outputs. Now let's take a step back and ask a provocative question. Does office work itself have value? If value is defined by outcomes, then office work only has value insofar as it contributes to those outcomes. Think about what most office work actually is: communication, coordination, documentation, and decision making. Those things don't produce value directly, they enable it. They're the connective tissue that lets the real value, products, services, impact, actually happen. But over time, we've built entire structures, entire careers around maintaining that connective tissue. We've made coordination itself into a kind of product: meetings, emails, forms, reports. Automation forces us to ask which parts of that connective tissue are actually necessary, which ones create clarity, and which ones create friction. Because the value of office work isn't in the work itself, it's in the flow it supports. That's why automating office work isn't about replacing humans. It's about freeing humans to focus on the parts of value creation that can't be automated: judgment, empathy, creativity, trust. Here's another tricky part: measuring value. In automation projects, it's tempting to measure outputs: number of workflows built, hours saved, forms processed. But those are proxies. The real measure of value is change in outcome. Did the customer get their result faster? Did the error rate go down? Did the decision process become clearer? Did people have more time for meaningful work? Those are value indicators. Sometimes automation doesn't even save time. It just creates clarity, and that's still value. If you've ever untangled a messy approval chain so that decisions happen in hours instead of weeks, you know exactly what I mean. That's value. Not because it's faster, but because it reduces uncertainty. And uncertainty in office work is the hidden tax on everything. Here's something people forget. Value is contextual. What's valuable in one process might be waste in another. For example, double-checking data might be essential in a financial report, but unnecessary in a quick team status update. Or a 24-hour response might be valuable in tech support, but unacceptable in a medical emergency. So you can't just copy-paste best practices across contexts. Automation should always start with a question. In this context, for this requester, what creates real value? That's how you avoid turning automation into bureaucracy with bots. There's a human side to this too. Sometimes we resist automation because the manual steps feel valuable. They make us feel needed, important, in control. That's natural. Work gives us identity. But the truth is, the value isn't in doing the task. It's in enabling the outcome. When automation takes away repetitive work, it's not taking away your value. It's taking away the distraction from your value. The best office automation stories aren't about cutting headcount. They're about redeploying talent. The person who used to spend hours copying data now uses that time to find insights. The person who used to approve things blindly now has time to ask better questions. That's value. That's growth. So how do we operationalize all this? Here's a simple framework I like to use when designing or automating a process. Number 1, define the output. What is the thing the requester actually wants? Not the activity, the result. Number 2, map the journey. List every step between start and output. Don't judge it yet, just see it. Number 3, challenge every step. Ask, does this contribute directly to the output? If not, can it be eliminated or automated? Number 4, ask who defines value. Make sure the requester's perspective drives the design, not the processor's. Number 5, measure real outcomes. Track improvements in impact, not just efficiency. That's the framework that keeps your automation aligned with value and not just with activity. As we move into an era of AI-assisted automation, the definition of value is shifting again. Tasks are becoming cheap. Decisions are becoming automated. What's left, what's truly valuable, are insights, relationships, and trust. In other words, the human layer. AI and automation can create efficiency, but they can't create meaning. Meaning is what happens when value connects to purpose. That's why the next generation of automation professionals won't just be engineers. They'll be value designers. People who can see the entire process ecosystem and align it with what actually matters. So let's bring it home. Every process, every workflow, every bit of office automation should have a value compass. That compass points to one thing, the requester's outcome. If you ever feel lost in complexity, politics, or performance metrics, ask yourself one question. Is what I'm doing creating value for the person who needs the result? If the answer is yes, keep going. If the answer is no, stop and redesign. That's how you turn office work from busy work into impact. That's how you turn automation from a gimmick into transformation. And that's how you build a culture where work, every click, every script, every flow, actually matters. Thanks for listening to Automate Office Work. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who's building processes, leading change, or just trying to make work make sense again. Until next time, focus on value. Everything else is noise. And happy automating.